Hey everybody, this is just Ethan at the top of the podcast. Just to let you know, we had a little bit of technical difficulties this week. Originally, we had recorded our review of Solo, a Star Wars story, as well as our section, What You Should Be Nerding Out To. But after we were done recording, we discovered that we had lost all of Eddie's voice recording from that section of the pod, so we just decided to omit that section. So there's a lot less Eddie in here than there normally would be. Sorry about that, any fans of Eddie out there. But I'm just gonna go ahead and do our What You Should Be Nerding Out To Spark Notes real quick. Essentially, it is, for me, I've been playing Pokemon Quest because that came out and there's new Pokemon stuff and it's cool and it's exciting. Eddie's got back into World of Warcraft, and Corey just finished watching all of Riverdale and says it's great, and you should all watch that too. So yeah, that's the little spark notes on that. But the rest of the episode's really great. We've got our whole review of Solo, a Star Wars story. But yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy it, and we now join me and Corey and Eddie in the review. Thanks guys for listening. Brrr. And welcome down to yet another week of Those Nerds You Know. My name is Ethan.
I'm Eddie.
And I'm Corey.
And we are Those Nerds You Know. And this week, we're coming straight at you with another new guest. Well, not a new guest. Another guest that you've heard before. The lovely voice of Corey.
Coincidentally, last time also talking about Star Wars.
Yes, you've been on both of our Star Wars episodes now. So... Welcome
Good
down,
thing,
welcome down.
I'm not a Star Wars person.
Yes,
So,
that's accurate.
so does that mean I am now branded as the Star Wars guy?
Well, that would have been you and Michael, but Michael can't be here because he's lame. Love you, Michael.
And is avert of technology.
That's true. No, we love you, Michael. Buy a computer, please. The last time Corey was here, he was with Michael, and we were talking about The Last Jedi. And this time, we're going to be talking about Solo, a Star Wars story, which I was, spoiler alert, pretty happy with. I think you were too as well, Corey, yeah?
Oh, yeah. It definitely exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because I didn't have great expectations for it, but I didn't have bad expectations. Like, I expected it to be a decent film. And it was, and I think it was a little bit more than decent for me, so I was well pleased.
Yeah, definitely. What concerned me was the lack of marketing until pretty late in the game, and then so I was kind of going into it, like you said, kind of expecting it to be pretty average, and then I just kind of fell in love with the characters.
Yeah, I really wasn't super stoked about it until the final trailer. The final trailer is the one that made me think, oh, you know what? There could be something to this. This could be pretty cool. Yeah. And then all of the drama around it of firing directors and all the the crap that supposedly it went through when it was early on, or even most of the way through production. I just wasn't expecting. I think everybody was just kind of holding their breath for it. Yeah. It was very good in my opinion. Like you said, the characters are really cool. I liked a lot of the things they got up to, and I enjoy that we've got just a cool, fun, good story that we didn't have to bring Luke or any other Skywalker into to have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
We just have a decent story.
I saw something recently in an article about it, and there's so many people that are saying that Star Wars the universe is not made for spin-offs other than the main stories, and I just don't agree with that. I would love to get more of the story that's not just, or more of the universe that's not just the core characters.
Yep, definitely agree. It's a really rich what am I trying to say, rich environment, rich galaxy, rich world where you can develop a lot of characters and you can have a lot of interesting stories. That's why there were so many books. There's tons of literature of Star Wars that is now mostly not canon after Disney purchased Star Wars and all of that. But the thing that's it's obviously something that can produce a lot of stories and a lot of good content. We don't need to stick to the strict storyline of just Luke and Darth Vader and Luke's kids or Han's kids. We can branch out and do a whole lot more, and I'm really glad that they are doing such things. I actually really liked Rogue One when it came out. I don't know, it didn't get that much. I think comparatively it wasn't that well liked, but I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I enjoyed this film.
Yeah, I was the same way with Rogue One, and I will say I do like the fact that these branch off movies make references and kind of lead into the events of the main ones. So I like that they're kind of keeping those references. They're not completely throwing away everything that made the original Star Wars or made the Star Wars movie Star Wars, but they're just exploring further out. I like that.
Definitely. And I enjoy it. As a general rule for myself, I really like world building, and I like seeing what other characters are up to in these worlds that I enjoy. I've mentioned before, I like My Hero Academia, the anime and the manga.
Spin-off situation, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's I know that most people cringe at spin-offs, and I think most spin-offs usually are pretty bad in general, but these movies are in the hands of people that really know what they're doing for the most part, and
Listen
I think
to our
they're
previous
gonna be
episode
fine. Yes.
of spin-offs. We have done an episode on that.
We have.
Think farther back, probably like 3 months ago.
And it's just, whew. When done well, I really, really like them. But like I was saying about My Hero Academia, there's a spin-off manga called My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Really, really like it. It's enjoyable. It's not exactly the same kind of story, but it's allowing us to see what other characters are doing in the world. And that's just cool to me. It makes the world feel more fleshed out and well thought out. And even so, like, George Lucas, when making these films originally and when building the Star Wars universe, he wanted Star Wars to feel like a place where it had been the future for a while, or at least the future in our understanding, like space travel and these really awesome guns and freaking laser swords and robots and all this nonsense. He wanted the world to feel like it had been that way. It had gotten to a certain point and it had just kind of hung out at that point for a long time, and people had been enjoying these kinds of and using and taking for granted these kinds of advances in technology for a long time. So sort of like a dusty future, and that's what we have in Star Wars. And because we have that, we can go so far back and so far forward from the stories we have in time to deal with and discover so many different kinds of characters and cool stuff. And it is kind of limiting that they're even holding these spin-off stories around the same time frame as the other movies. But I don't know. I think the general populace would be more on board with spin-offs that are closer than farther off. But it's good. Anyways, the meat of this one, Solo. This movie is about Han Solo.
What? I'm gonna have to go and see it now.
Never
Is
saw that
Harrison
one coming.
Ford in it?
Get off your butt, Eddie. No.
Is Harrison Ford isn't in it? Oh, I don't want to see that.
Yes, this is about how Han Solo became Han Solo. This is about young Han Solo.
But is it Han Solo without Harrison Ford?
I think that
I think
What's
he
your
did a very
judge?
good job.
I think he did an okay job. It was fine. His acting's good, and I don't even know his name, but it was enjoyable and it was believable by the end of it. Like I believed that this was Han. That being said, I feel like there were better choices, but it's okay.
Yeah, and to be fair, Harrison Ford's shoes are extremely large to fill.
Yeah,
especially in such a universe. And I'm honestly surprised that they actually went through with this this movie.
Yeah, I'd agree. It takes some cojones to attempt to revisit one of the more popular characters, especially I think after how divisive The Last Jedi was. But obviously when that movie came out, this movie was already well into production. But like, yeah, for a movie like The Last Jedi that really tested, I think, a lot of fans of the original series and older movies, to put out this film that's about one of the characters everybody really likes, was gutsy. Because a lot could have gone wrong, and I don't feel like it's nearly as bad as it could have been. I think it was actually pretty excellent. So anyway, we start off in this film on Corellia, which is where Homeboy's from, Han, and he's sort of an orphan with a bunch of other orphans working for this slimy worm creature that's like a crime boss, and it gets all the orphans to steal things and bring them back so that they can live there. Yeah, just
basically
typical...
like a bunch of British organized pickpockets.
Yeah.
Like little kids from the Victorian era kind of thing.
Tiny
sparrows
British
from the Game
pickpockets.
of Thrones series.
Right.
Surely. But yeah, so that's where we start off, the dirty underbelly of Corellia, and Han gets his hands on some coaxium, some refined coaxium, which is then sort of turned into the general MacGuffin of this movie. He finds some, and he's like, this could sell a really high price for the whatever. Like, anyone would buy this for a lot. And so he grabs this girl that he's in love with and in cahoots with on the planet Corellia.
Spoiler alert, it's not Leia.
It is not. And he's like, we can get out of here. And they attempt to do so. And it's... So there are plenty of things that are mediocre about this film and kind of dumb. But there are plenty of other things that I think are really cool. One of the things that was definitely dumb that I don't feel like they should have done, but for some reason they did, was so like they're racing out of this place, trying to get to like a basically like an airport, where they can use this coaxium to sort of leverage their way onto a ship to get off Corellia. In doing so, someone from Lady Proxima. So Lady Proxima is the worm person, the thing making all the orphans steal stuff. They find out of this plan, or they find out they're trying to run, and so someone's trying to catch them. So there's like this little speeder chase. They get to the airport, and somehow get most of the way there, and then right as they're about to get through, they give the coaxium to a guard. They bribe the guard to open the doors, and Han gets in, and girl's following him, and she gets grabbed right as the doors are shutting, and for whatever reason, the doors cannot be unshut, and so girl gets taken in a really moving scene, and like almost immediately following this, Han's like, I know what I'll do, I'll sign up for the Imperial Army, which I think might have been one of his plans to begin with, but we'll see. So I'll sign up, I'll become a pilot, whatever. So there's like a recruitment desk. He walks up to it, and he's like, hi, I'd like to be a pilot. And they're like, okay, cool, what's your name? He's like, Han. And they're like, okay, what's your last name? He's like, I don't have one. And he's like, you don't have a last name? It's like, no. Okay. Anybody with you? He's like, no, it's just me. He's like, okay, Han Solo. And then I half expected him to like wink into the camera as he wrote that down. But like, I'm just like, that is so dumb. How is this how this character got his last name? Surely not. But yeah, no, that's it. That's how they expect you to believe that Han Solo came to be known as.
It's canon
Han
now.
Solo.
Sorry, that is exactly how it happened.
It is. I know it is, but I'm just like.
You can think it's dumb. It's now canon. 100%.
I'm aware of that, but I'm just like, how did this get through someone's like, how did this, like, what were the other choices in writing this? And like, you know what I mean? Like, what other ideas must they have said no to settle on this as to how we're going to show people that, like, why couldn't you just have a last name? Anyways, that I felt was dumb. But I don't know. I really enjoyed this film. I liked the feel of it. I liked a lot of the characters. I liked a lot of the costumes. I liked seeing a lot of the aliens. I really enjoy the Star Wars world. Star Wars world. But from there, what do we get next for? Oh, the next thing is a really cool scene that I wish would have lasted longer, which was, it's like, it fast forwards 3 years from that point, and Han is in a battle, like in an actual battle where the Imperials are trying to take over some planet, and so they're fighting with the natives, and it looks really good. What did you think about that, Corey?
I thought that was cool, and if I can back up for just a moment,
absolutely not. We have moved forward. That's fine. Yeah, do what you wish.
I really loved the lead up into this scene because it's like the very tail end of talking to the recruiter guy, and the recruiter's like, most people wash out of the Imperial Navy and wind up in the front lines, the infantry, and Han's like, that's never gonna happen to me. Boom, he's on the front lines in the infantry.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yep, that's exactly what it
was. It was just so funny to me. And there's a little bit of dialogue in there later where they kind of explain why he got kicked out. Hint, it was insubordination and having a mind of his own.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
You can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I totally love that scene. The whole war, the battle was very intense, and I thought the choreography on it was really well done, especially once they introduced Beckett.
Yeah. This is where we get to meet Beckett, who's sort of a main protagonist and antagonist, spoiler alert, but sort of helps Han get into the life of being a smuggler. But it's just really cool. It's really dusty and gritty war zone, shooting off blasters, people getting disintegrated by big blaster fire. It's big chicken walkers walking around and AT-ATs or whatever they are. Really cool stuff going on. I wish that had lasted a bit longer. But anyway, that leads to Han talking with Beckett and his group, who are there disguised as Imperial soldiers so that they can get their hands on some... What are they there? Are they there to get coaxium there?
No, I think they were there to get information on the shipment.
Maybe so, yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yep. It's also here that so after the battle, when they're all in there and they're back on wherever they are, what would you call that, Corey?
What do you mean, in their ship?
Not in their ship. After the battle, when they're walking about in their own sort of area.
Oh, yeah, in their base or whatever, their camp.
Yeah. Base, camp, words I couldn't think of. So they're walking around in their camp. That's sort of when Han gets into a little bit more trouble because, again, he's arrogant. His mouth gets him into some trouble with Beckett, and he ends up getting thrown to the beast.
Yeah. So he basically realizes that Beckett is not who he says he is and tries to blackmail him into letting Han join.
Yep.
And it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work at all. So he gets thrown to the beast because the beast is going to eat him or whatever. And turns out said beast is everyone's favorite Wookiee, Chewbacca. Yes.
Who was that? I couldn't hear it over the Chewbacca sound. What was that?
So he gets thrown down here, and this beast walks out of the cave, and it's Chewie. But it's not our happy-go-lucky friendly Chewie. It's this starved monster Chewie that they've been feeding insubordinate Imperials to. And they have a fight, and then Han speaks a little bit of Wookiee to Chewbacca, and they make a plan. Yeah,
I was just thinking that.
Wookish. He speaks Wookish.
Wookish, I like it.
But he does that, and then they sort of like fake a fight so that they can break down one of the pillars. That's so like they're in a hole that's got a caged top. It's being held up by some pillars. They knock out some pillars, and then they're able to. I think Chewie's able to throw Han out, and Chewie's able to jump out himself. They get out, and then from there, Han convinces Chewie to follow him because they're chained to one another. So at first they try to go different directions, and that doesn't work out because they're chained together.
It
It's
doesn't
hilarious.
work well. It works fine for Chewbacca.
Yeah, that's true. It worked out fine for Chewie. Did not work as well for Han. And then so Han convinces Chewie to go a different way, and they eventually get back to the ship that Beckett and his crew were stealing, and he gets on with them. And then thus we have the beginnings of Han's life as a smuggler. And then we move from there to another bit that I really enjoy, which was they're trying to take a whole lot of coaxium, steal it from the Imperials.
Yeah, like a whole train car.
Well, is it from the Imperials?
Coaxium. Yeah, it was the Imperials.
Who were they selling it to? Well, I guess they were selling it to the crime syndicate that's not Imperials. That's right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep thinking that the crime syndicate is the Imperials, but they're not.
No, they're not. So it was an Imperial shipment of coaxium for the Navy because the coaxium is hyperspace fuel.
Yes.
So they were stealing it or the Imperials were just delivering it to like a shipyard or to another base or something for their own use. And they were trying to steal it, and there's a plot point a little bit later on.
Right. And for whatever reason, it's being transported by train of some sort, like super future Star Wars train, rather than being transported by a ship. I don't know. Anyway, it's being transported by train, which is cooler for cinematic reasons. And they go about it. It's really cool. So we got Beckett's homegirl, who's like his second in command, and then they have a pilot already, which is why they weren't super keen on letting Han in, because Han was like, I'm a pilot, and they're like, we got a perfectly good pilot. Anyway, they've got their pilot, who's a alien guy, voiced by, I believe that one's the one that's voiced by Jon Favreau, and they attempt to steal stuff, and stuff goes wrong. One thing that goes wrong is a rival sort of like smuggler gang shows up and also attempting to steal the coaxium. And they ended up setting off the security system for the rails, which is a bunch of fighter droids that fly around. And so, in all this nonsense, Beckett loses his homegirl, his wife, girly friend, whoever it is. She dies, so she can take out the rails and destroy the train after they hook up their ship to the specific car of the train that they're trying to heist. And then our pilot gets shot and dies. So this is the point where Han, who at this point is on the train with Beckett and Chewie, has to climb back up and prove his schnapps as a pilot, and where he eventually does become the pilot for the crew, which is cool. Fine. But it sets up the rest of the film where they end up losing the coaxium, and which is bad because Beckett has orders from a higher member of whatever crime syndicate he's answering to get the coaxium, and so he's essentially like, I'm screwed now, and I'm either going to die or find some way to get more coaxium, which is incredibly rare and incredibly expensive. So that's what brings Han and Chewie with Beckett face to face with Dryden something or other.
Dryden Voss.
Dryden Voss.
Yes, he is
played by the Vision. I don't remember that guy's name.
Me either, but it's the guy that plays Vision.
What is this, a crossover?
Yeah, it was crazy when I realized that that's who that was, because I didn't know that going in, and I was like, man, he plays a really cool villain, because
yes,
he's like,
I agree with you.
He's really sneaky and he's kind of out of his mind, but just obviously very powerful, both financially and physically. Seems to know how to fight.
Right.
And he's crazy looking. He's mostly human looking, but he has what appear to be scars, but I imagine are just like maybe features of whatever alien race he is. But like tiger stripe scars up and down boy's face.
Right.
And yeah.
He's the kind of like crazy bad guy where he's like super friendly. Like he's like, why would you come to me like this? Like, now I have to stab you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on, man.
Yes. Just, yep, super friendly. Let's have a seat. Let's drink. Let's
but,
all get
yeah.
a drink. No one leaves here without a drink. We're going to have a good time. It's going to be great. Yeah, and if you don't get that coaxium to me, I'm going to have to cut you into tiny pieces. So, why don't you handle up on that, will you?
Right, it's
And
like
so,
a very
yeah,
sinister friendliness.
Yes, super cool. And at this moment, during this meeting, we also get to see his second in command, who happens to be old girl that Han got separated from in Corellia. Because again, we I guess forgot to mention this earlier, but the whole time he swore that he would come back to get said girl. And so this whole time he's been out trying to gain some money so that he can buy a ship so that he can go back to Corellia. Which is why he was so quick and easy to leave the Imperial Army.
Right. Her name was Kira, by the way. She did have a name. They didn't call her old girl the whole time.
Her name was Old Girl.
I'm sorry, I must have been watching the wrong movie.
Yes, you went to the wrong film, sir. Yeah, Kira. So that's cool. So we see her. We see that she's attached to this syndicate, and Dryden Voss, luckily enough, ends up sending her with the crew whenever they propose their crazy scheme to get more coaxium. So she is sent off with them to acquire a fast ship and to get this coaxium. And of course, the fast ship is going to come from... What is his name? You've got it, Corey. What is his name?
Lando Calrissian.
Lando Calrissian.
The infamous.
Played by Childish Gambino.
Donald Glover.
Yep.
/ Childish Gambino. And
Yes,
I
indeed.
thought he played it super well.
Gosh, did he?
He was amazing.
I loved it. I love his performance. I love it so much.
Yes.
Super good. He reminds me a lot of it's the second Harry Potter when the guy that teaches Defense Against the Dark Arts is just basically a charlatan.
Gilderoy Lockhart.
Sure, you'd know better than I.
That was his name.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Reminds me a lot of that guy if he were like even better and more suave at what he does.
If everything he said was actually true.
It was actually true. But it's cool because like obviously those things aren't true about Lando because it's funny because like later on we see him like kicking back and recording a story, like narrating one of his own stories in the Falcon while everyone else is out actually doing what they came there to do. It's great. It's really stupid. But yeah, the guy who's obviously very much invested in himself, loves all his pretty capes. He's got a cape room, Eddie. He's got a room where he keeps his capes.
He does.
Yeah.
That does sound very much like Gilderoy Lockhart.
It's so funny. Kira happens across the cape room and she's like, "Oh my god!" She comments on how many capes he has.
He's got
aboard the
buckets of
Falcon.
them.
Buckets.
Actually, I think we should probably backtrack just a second here. Sorry.
Absolutely. So yeah, when we meet him, we're in a funny little cantina, and he's playing sabacc.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Yes.
Which is like the poker of the Star Wars realm. That they don't really take time to explain to us, which I'm perfectly okay with. I'm fine with it just being like, this is a game that they play. Like, cool, awesome sauce.
But how will
Thanks.
Disney sell merchandise of that?
Oh, they will sell so much merch it don't matter. But it's cool. And then, so this is the point where it's cool because it's a cool little like, what's the word? Like bait and switch. Where a lot of people who know Han or know a bit about Han Solo know that he won the Falcon from Lando in some form of gambling. And when you come in, they play a game. That's how he gets into here. He starts playing a game of sabacc with Lando and bets his super fancy, Han bets his super fancy, awesome, great ship that he doesn't actually have against Lando's Millennium Falcon. And ends up losing because Lando cheats, but we don't
Right
see
up the
this, or at
sleeve.
least Han isn't aware of it yet until the end of it, which is it's just interesting because you think going in, oh, we're gonna watch Han win the Falcon, it's gonna be so sweet. Doesn't happen.
That old Disney razzle dazzle bait and switch.
Yep. But instead we get afterwards we get a conversation with Kira and Lando, and then eventually Beckett and Lando about how they need him, they need his ship, and he can get a cut of the oh gosh.
The profits.
The profits, yes. He's like, I'm on 50%. And Beckett's like, negative, Ghost Rider. You're going to get 25%. He's like, 40. He's like,
he tries to talk
25. Or nothing. He's like, okay, fine.
So from there they go. They actually have to get to the Millennium Falcon now, and Lando's like talking up about how
right.
he's got his prize ship behind a gate for safekeeping because it wanders off, and turns out the Millennium Falcon got booted.
Yeah, it's got impounded. It's just so freaking great.
What is the Star Wars equivalent of booting?
There's literally a gigantic boot on its landing gear.
Yeah, it's basically chained to the platform, and Beckett's like, "Yeah, your prize ship looks an awful lot like it got impounded." Mm-hmm. He's like, I can take care of this for you, but it's going to cost you 5% of your cut.
Yeah,
and this was my favorite line.
Yeah,
Lando at this point, it's like, oh crap, I can't remember exactly what it was. He's like, I don't like it, I don't agree to it, but I'll take it.
Yes. Yeah, it just becomes painfully obvious that like Lando agreed to this so that just so he could get his ship back, just so he could get them to help him break his ship out of this place, which is great. It was really good. We also get introduced to Lando's droid L3, which I was fine with. I
thought L3 was funny.
Yeah, she's pretty funny. She's like a droid activist. She's super against droids being used basically as slaves, and so she's becomes basically a freedom fighter, and it's just really cool. It's really fun to watch her interactions with Lando, and let's see, we get them off this ship, or we get them onto the ship and off of this planet, and they drive through some crazy clouds in space to get to the mining planet of
Kessel. The Kessel Run, everyone? Yes. This movie is about the Kessel Run.
So we actually get to the Kessel Run in this film.
The giant space storm thing was called the Maelstrom. Such a cool name.
Surely. So they get through the Maelstrom, they get to Kessel, and so the Kessel is basically just a planet of mines for coaxium. So their big plan is to get unrefined coaxium and then race it really quickly to a refinery that's not under Imperial rule, so that they can refine the coaxium before it explodes and kills all of them. And then they can get that refined coaxium to Dryden Voss. So that's why they needed the fast ship in the first place. Because if the coaxium falls below a certain or rises above a certain temperature, it will explode. And so like when it comes out of a mine, it's put straight into a refining process.
Yeah, they're like special freezing tanks, basically. Mm-hmm. They look like giant fire extinguishers.
Yep, and they're refined very quickly, but most of the refineries, I think, are all run by Imperials, and I think even this mine was an Imperial run mine. Anyways, they get there and they commence Operation Steal Some Coaxium. In so doing, so they sneak in, or a few of them sneak in. Lando stays in the ship. Everyone else sneaks in. Han and Chewie are brought in as slaves, and Kira is acting as if she's some kind of big ambassador or second in command to an ambassador type person or diplomat, and then Beckett is like an escort, like a soldier escort bodyguard for her. So get them in there, and the plan is to for Beckett and Kira to distract people enough so that Han and Chewie can find the coaxium and get it out. And what ends up happening is essentially a mass breakout for all of the droid slaves and all the enslaved Wookiees that we end up coming across.
All instigated by L3.
All instigated by L3.
It was brilliant. I loved it.
It's real good. Yeah, just essentially gets to a point where Beckett has to shoot down a whole lot of guards and people in the main control room. L3 starts ripping off some of the control blocks or whatever they are on droids so that they can have their free will back.
Yeah, it was basically free will inhibitors, essentially.
Yes. So
L3 was like, brother, don't listen to their propaganda. Like, it's basically like a giant anti-communist, anti-robot slave rant, and it was amazing.
It was really good. So yeah, the L3 starts freeing droids, and Chewie comes across Wookiees that have been enslaved, so he starts freeing them, and Han finds coaxium, and turns out it's real heavy stuff when you put it in their canisters. He gets one done, and they're like, all right, 11 more. He's like, holy crap. Anywhoozles, in the midst of all this craziness, we get the coaxium, we get it out, a lot of people get shot. Like a whole lot of people get shot. And L3 gets blasted while she's trying to protect some people, and Lando is beside himself with grief because he really likes this droid. Some would say he even loves this droid. And we witness Han risking his life to save Lando, who risked his life to go out and save L3, and then Chewie, who comes up and grabs both of them, Lando and L3. And so it's an interesting moment where we see kind of how Lando might actually owe his life to Han and Chewie. All this craziness alerts nearby Imperials, so they're trying to leave, and they're trying to go back to the maelstrom the way they came, but they can't because there's a big old Imperial cruiser, and it deploys a lot of cool TIE fighters that try to take them out. So it's at this point that the Kessel Run really begins, because they have to get this coaxium back to this other planet. Do you remember the name of that planet, Corey?
I'm looking for that right now.
You do that. Anyway, they have to get it to this planet where they can refine it. And now they have to avoid being destroyed by TIE fighters and the Imperials. And they also have to get through this maelstrom that's incredibly difficult to get through if you don't follow the directed paths. So they're floating through these clouds. They find a giant space squid that tries to eat them, and they have to get the space squid to fall into this gravity well, and then they have to overload their engines so they can shoot out of the gravity well and just closely careen through these converging rocks so they can blast out of there and get the Kessel Run done in 12 parsecs if you round down.
The planet is called Savareen, by the way.
Savareen.
And yes, so I read an interesting article about the Kessel Run and the parsecs thing that we can talk about once we're done with the cap.
Cool. Fine. So they get there. I think a lot of interesting things that happen in this movie happen at this point when they get to this place. Han ends up having to pilot. This is the first time he's piloted the Falcon up until through this movie. He pilots it. They get to this place and it is beat to crap. And so this is how we go from the Falcon being this beautiful, nice, wonderfully luxurious ship into the really, really crappy, beat up Falcon that we see in Star Wars. But they get to this place in the nick of time. They start refining the coaxium, and lo and behold, the freaking other smugglers or thieves show up that had shown up earlier to steal the coaxium from the train heist.
Yes, they were referred to as just the Raiders, and they were commanded by a pirate called Enfys Nest.
Infus, yes.
which I thought was a really cool name.
Yeah, I agree. And it is during this altercation that we come in that we are given the revelation that this group of people are just another group of natives to a planet that have been ruined by the Empire, and that they're just trying to fight back against the Empire, and they sort of win over Han's heart because he is a good guy at this moment, and it's really, really interesting and cool because essentially this is like really early rebellion. So sort of like the beginnings of the rebellion that we'll see in the original Star Wars trilogy.
This is technically before that. The timeline for this supposedly is between Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One.
Yeah, it would definitely be between that, and it's before. I think it's set before the Rebels TV series as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, really early beginnings of this. It's basically just the first few bits of people deciding to try and fight against the Empire and trying. So essentially, what they're trying to do is take this coaxium so they can have some for themselves and some way to make money for the rebellion and be able to support the rebellion. So, also at this time we see we witness Lando leave them and just desert them, gets in his Millennium Falcon and just blasts off out of there. Yeah,
that was right before it was revealed that they were actually good guys and not raiders the whole time. It looks like there's about to be this huge, this really awesome like standoff gunfight between Han, Beckett, and Enfys, and Han's like, right over there in our ship we've got like so many reinforcements, like they're gonna come out and surround you, and then Lando is just like screw this, I'm out,
takes off. Yeah.
and like Han is funny, like Han like walked forward, made this bold proclamation, Lando flies off, and then he just kind of like takes a few steps back real slowly. He's like, you got this, Beckett, my bad, I spoke too soon.
It's good. But anyway, this is when we get this fun plan that's hatched to allow them to get the drop on Dryden and still keep their coaxium and pass it off to the rebellion. And Beckett's like, nah, I've had enough of this. I'm just gonna go do me. You can go do you if you want to try and cross Dryden. We now get to this point where Dryden shows up, and we're trying to get him all of this coaxium, and we witness them they bring the coaxium up, and Dryden's like, this ain't the real coaxium, and he's like, I know somebody who tells me the truth all the time, and through the doors walks Beckett, and everybody's like, whoa! Beckett betrayed them, which you should supposed to like see happening because he's given Han at least a couple of warnings about people betraying him. It's like, always assume everybody will betray you. You'll never be disappointed. So then we get to have Beckett betray them. Woo! So that's cool. And then a fight ensues amongst Beckett and Dryden and Han and Chewie and all them. And so what ends up happening is Beckett ends up getting Chewie at gunpoint. Chewie grabs the coaxium and Beckett walks Chewie out. So Beckett's now stealing the coaxium from everybody. And then Kira, Han, and Dryden have a fight. And Kira betrays her master and kills Dryden. And it's cool. And then Han's like, oh, great, now we can get out of here. We can go get that coaxium from What's-His-Bucket, and we'll be good. And she's like, yeah, totally. That's a great idea. Why don't you go do that, and I'll gather up a few more valuable things from this guy's valuable things collection, and I'll be right behind you. Yeah? And he's like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And so he goes after Beckett, and she's hanging out upstairs. And now, as is protocol, since her boss is dead and she was second in command. She's now in command. And she can call his boss and tell him that. So she does. So we get to witness her call the guy that Dryden answers to. Which turns out to be none other than Spiky Head himself, Darth Maul. How did you feel when you saw that, Corey?
I just kind of like froze, honestly. I was like, I was in shock. I really was. I was in shock.
So excited. I was so
I forgot
pumped.
about this guy.
I was so pumped when he was on screen. Because at first you hear him speak and you see these legs. Because you just see, it's just a shot of his legs. And they're metal. And I'm
ironic. Oh, were they?
Yeah, it's these, because he has his metal android legs, his cyborg legs, or whatever they are.
I didn't realize they were metal. I thought he had just dark pants on.
Nope, he's got some metal legs, because the last time we saw him on screen, he was cut in half. So, anywhoozles, eventually we get a shot of his head, his face, and then for no reason at all, he turns on his lightsaber while talking to her, just in case you didn't know who he was still. Just in case you were like, who's this red-faced, spiky-headed man? And then he turns on his double-edged red lightsaber, and everybody can be like, oh, we've seen him before. Yes, you have. That was completely unnecessary. But essentially, he does like the Snoke thing from The Force Awakens, where he's like, come to me. And he just like turns on the lightsaber. And then, yeah, dumb. He didn't need to do that. But I was so beside myself with joy at just seeing him. I didn't really care that much. I was so happy to see him. He's one of my favorites. He's like the best thing to come out of the first movie, or episode 1. And I was real happy to see him again. Even though like we've known that he's been around for a while, because I think he has a brief stint in the Clone Wars and also in Rebels. So he's here, but now he's on the big screen. I'm so excited. Like I really want him to be in another film because he's actually really cool. But anywho, that was really cool for me. That point for me was when I was like, man, this film, yeah, real good. I'm happy with this. I'm super A-okay with this. So many people betraying other people, and so many Darth Mauls. It's good. It's so good.
So many of them.
all one of them.
Yep. It's then at this point we go to the beach where Han has now stopped Beckett, and Beckett's like, who you think you kidding? And then sure enough, the ship takes off. Dryden's ship takes off because homegirl Kira is like, yep, I'm out. And Han's like, what, for reals? And Beckett's like, yeah, I told you. And then Beckett tries to pull a gun on Han, but Han shot first and killed this fool, which was fine. A-okay. I'm A-okay with that. Kills Beckett. There's a tender scene of Beckett dying, and then we got Han and Chewie Boy with their coaxium. And I think from there it goes to, I don't remember. Corey, was the additional scene with Lando, was that still part of the regular film, or was that an after credit? I can't remember. I think it was part of the film.
It was part of the film. It was the very last thing before the credits.
Yes.
Because we actually didn't stay through the credits when we went.
Yeah, I think I did, and I don't think there was anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So like once they killed Beckett and they took the coaxium back to the village, back to Enfys and
that's right.
The people, and Enfys actually she explained what they were using the coaxium for, and they were going to use it. She was like, "This is enough coaxium to light the fires and fuel a rebellion." And you could be a great hero. You can be a pilot for the rebellion.
Yeah, you could be a great leader. Yeah, that's what she said. They were looking for leaders.
He's like, nah, that's not for me. I'm gonna go be a smuggler.
Yep.
Because Beckett actually gave a hint about someone putting together a job on Tatooine before he walked away to go tell Dryden and double cross Han. So Han is like, nah, I'm going to go to Tatooine and I'm going to join up with this crew.
Yes, indeed. This is also, and from there we get the scene of Han actually winning the Falcon from Lando. They find Lando, and he challenges him to a game of sabacc. But first, he shakes hands with the man, hugs him dearly, and in so doing, snatches the card out of the mechanical device on Lando's wrist that he would use to give himself the extra card that he needed. And by so doing, prevents him from being able to cheat in the last round, where he usually would. And then he loses to Han, and Han, because he's so smart and awesome and brave and handsome, wins the Falcon. And then we have Han Solo and Chewbacca in the Falcon. Roll credits. Bum ba bum.
Indeed.
Whew. Anyway, I generally like this film. I liked pretty much all of it. Like I said, there's a couple parts that are dumb, mostly revolving around things that people say, but I generally enjoyed this film. I would see it again. I was happy to see it. I think it's a fine origin story for our boy Han.
I thought it was a pretty well done heist movie as well. If you're into like a heist, a good old heist, maybe that has train robberies,
Yeah,
it's definitely
it's
a film
decent.
for you.
Yeah, there's a couple of good moments of heisting in this. I personally didn't find the heisting too extraordinary, but I'm not super impressed with heist movies at this point because I've seen quite a few, and
Ocean's 11 did it best.
yeah, it kind of did, and every other movie is kind of just that again. Like, that's really what it is.
Yeah, well, now they're remaking it with a female cast.
Indeed, of course, that's what you do to keep series
carefully,
alive
Ethan.
and make them relevant. You just replace all the men with women. And
Well, okay, this one's it's a reboot though, and it's not like they're just recasting the characters. This is the main character is Frank Ocean's sister,
correct.
and it actually takes place after the events of all the previous movies.
Yep, and they've set it up started at 8, so they can do their own trilogy of 9 and 10.
Right.
Because that always works out. Anyways, enough about that film. I liked Solo lots, and would see it again and would recommend it. Corey, you wanted to say something about the parsecs and the Kessel Run?
Yeah. So there was whenever in the originals, whenever Han was like, "Oh, we made the Kessel Run in less than 14 parsecs," everyone got in a tizzy because everyone's like, "A parsec is a measurement of distance, not time," and they actually kind of fixed that in here. So the Kessel Run would have been going from Kessel back through the Maelstrom, following the lighted path, the only safe way through. But it was blocked, and they uploaded L3's memory into their navigational data into the Falcon. So Han was able to use that to help navigate through the uncharted sections of the Maelstrom. So basically, by doing that, he basically cut a straight line straight through the woods, essentially. So imagine if, you lived in one point and your friend lived somewhere else, and you had to take a whole bunch of winding, crisscrossing roads to get there. Then you're like, nah, screw that. I'm just going to run in a straight line through all these woods. You're effectively cutting your distance down from, let's just say, 20 miles to 12 miles. So
Gotcha.
he actually was bragging about distance, not time. He's like, yeah, normally it would take us like 20 parsecs to get there. I did it in 12.
Gotcha.
Rounding down, of course.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
That's cool. All right.
And another thing that I thought about recently that Star Wars has kind of gone back on some of their lore. So it was explained in one of the other movies that there's only ever 2 Sith alive and active at once. Well, if Maul is still alive here, you've got the Emperor.
So it's explained that Maul actually, he is alive, but he is not Sith. Or if he claims to be Sith, he is not actually an apprentice at the moment. When he came back to life, I think this is in Rebels. It might be in Clone Wars. I'm pretty sure it's in Rebels. Though.
Oh, I haven't seen any of those, so I don't know all of
That's
that.
okay. It's fine. He goes back to the Emperor and he's like, "Hey, Emperor, I would like to continue being your apprentice." And Emperor's like, "Nah, bro, I got one." I think it was Dooku at that point. And
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
so that's when Maul decides to become a crime lord and be at the head of a really big crime syndicate so that he can rival the Empire and get his revenge and take them down. So the Black Sun
Okay, gotcha.
is his. And I think I think it is hinted that he heads several different syndicates.
Yeah, because the main one in this one was the Crimson Dawn.
Yes, Crimson Dawn. I think the Black Sun is like the conglomerate of all of them, or like 5 or so big
Gotcha.
syndicates. Anyways, that's where he fits in. He is not. I think his race is Sith, but his alignment is not. He's not a Sith Lord at the moment.
He's
or
just a
an
Force
apprentice.
user.
Yes, he is
Okay,
a dark.
That makes sense.
I guess a dark Jedi. I don't know.
That makes
He's
sense.
a really cool guy with a double-bladed lightsaber that he just loves turning on. It's
If I
his
had a
only means of
double-bladed
light.
lightsaber, I'd love turning it on too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being honest.
But yeah, that's Solo. I recommend it. I think Corey would recommend it as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Really good, pleasantly surprising. I loved all the double crossing and just the fun smuggling, and seeing Darth Maul again really made that for me. So that was cool. Well, that's all good and well. I think that's about it for this show. Next week, I don't know what we're going to do next week, listeners. We'll figure it out, though. We do indeed make it up as we go. That is not a lie. But thanks you to everyone who sticks with us and actually does listen. We very much appreciate you listening. Remember that you can find us on all the social medias. On the Twitters, we are at TNYK Pod. We're on Facebook at TNYK Pod as well. Or just search Those Nerds You Know. You can find us on YouTube as well. You can email the show, Those Nerds You Know pod@gmail.com. Let us know on Twitters or anywhere else if you liked Solo and what you thought about it, what your favorite parts were. If you didn't think it was as good as it should have been, let us know all of that, and let us know if you were as excited as we were to see freaking Darth Maul. Also, let us know how you feel about the Pokemon stuff coming up. Let us know if you're excited, if there's anything good, or anything that you're really looking forward to. Let me know if you've played Pokemon Quest and if you enjoy it or don't. Tell us all your wonderful feelings and opinions, and be sure to find us on iTunes, Google Play, CastBox, Stitcher, Podbean, all of those places where you can find pods. You will find us. But yeah, that's about it for this week. My name is Ethan.
I'm Eddie.
And I'm Corey.
And we are Those Nerds You Know. Bye.
Laters.